Gamers, Path of Exile 2 just dropped, and I wanted to give some honest reviews. As a first-time player, I've never played Path of Exile 1, and I wanted to tell you the good and the bad that I've enjoyed over the last couple days playing. And let me tell you, this game is a masterpiece. I've been enjoying it so much. Team No Sleep, just grinding. And man, I want to break down some stuff, so let's get into it. First, I'm going to talk about everything of the good, and then some of the stuff that I don't like, the bad. But there's not a lot. It's just kind of nitpicky stuff that I've noticed as a new player, and you might have too. So the good, great character selection. Right off the rip, you got 6 classes to choose from with 2 different ascendancy paths once you complete your trials, and skill tree that's bigger than most people's TVs. But again, you have different classes. You can try melee builds, you can try sword builds, you can be Harry Potter, you know, you can shoot crossbows everywhere. And I feel like it does give you a wide selection of first starting characters and being able to try different things out. When you start playing the game, simple quests. It tells you pretty much go talk to this person, follow this. I'm in Act 3 right now, and it's pretty much just walked me through the whole game. And, you know, as a new player, I feel like that's very important. When you start running into bosses, good boss designs. I mean, every single boss I feel like I'm running into, it feels like Elden Ring. It's Elden Ring mixed with Diablo and Path of Exile. It's just mechanics and music and lots of deaths. But it's a good challenge. One thing I like about the skill tree, it did look very intimidating, but once you select your character, there's kind of like, as my class, you know, I'm in the bottom left-hand corner with my warrior, so I kind of just follow the melee damage with the armor, and then I just pretty much can go bounce around wherever I want. But what's nice about the skill tree is that you can refund if you have the gold, which is pretty hard in the beginning of the game. I didn't really start seeing changes until I got later into Act 2, to where I can actually get those nodes that made my build stronger. But again, it's kind of just trial and error. You're gonna mess up, you might brick a character, you can't, you know, you can start over. It's just it's something that you can really get into. And yesterday I got frustrated, and I'm like, dude, I gotta fix my character, because man, this is just tough. So you're gonna run into challenges like that, so I'm just letting you know it's okay. Now, when you're unlocking skills for your character, there's actually an audio cue in the game that tells you what you're selecting. There's a video prompt. It tells you what you're unlocking. I think this video tutorial in the guide as like an access info is wonderful for players to understand what they're grinding for. If you're like me and you really don't like the clicky movement, there's WASD movement for mouse and keyboard players, and I've been using a controller just to like level so I can like chill and talk to chat. Controller feels amazing. Button mapping is just very simple, and it doesn't feel like you're being left out, you know, of a challenge. Again, this is just me giving my honest opinion on the game, what I've discovered so far, so I don't want anyone to take things out of context. So the bad, map areas are just too big in these acts. Like I said, I'm about 60% done with Act 3, and I just feel like I'm walking, going over the same areas. Again, these places are supposed to be huge because they only launch with 3 acts, but I just feel like some missions are just, I just did one mission where I had to like drain the pool or drain the water and pull like 7 levers. It's like, it would have been nice if we only had to pull 3, but I think later in the end game, players will discover that, man, these maps are just huge, and it's really going to punish you for being so long because you're going to die more. Movement speed. While you're running around doing these maps, I feel like everyone's movement speed could be buffed a little bit. I did get a unique that did increase my movement speed. If I got hit by an enemy, I pretty much get a movement speed until I get hit again, which is absolutely amazing. And I was so excited when I got the boots, but I feel like other classes might not have that stuff right away, or my base class might not have that. I feel like base character movement speed could be a little better, so you're not just, you know, walking around or spamming a certain ability to move. Everyone should just be a little quicker. When you're starting to get into upgrading your gems, upgrading your skills, or trying to roll your armor, it can definitely be confusing. So stuff like that in the game, I feel like since there's so many tutorials in the game and so much like info, there could be like a quest at these vendors to kind of teach players, hey, this is how you upgrade your armor, this is how you upgrade this. So pretty much just like an introduction quest. I think a tutorial there would be nice. Loot and gold. I feel like I wasn't getting much loot until halfway through Act 2. Barely any things were dropping on the ground. Gold is really hard to get. I feel like every time I get gold, it's just, I'm gonna spend it, it's gone. And I know that we're gonna get spoiled later in the game, but when players are grinding their characters in the beginning of the game, they're gonna feel the same way I did. They're like, man, I just really don't have any materials. I don't have gold. I don't have loot. I'm not getting anything good. I mean, I didn't get an amulet to drop until Act 3. I had to buy an amulet from a vendor. Speaking of vendors, I feel like it's too expensive. I mean, just to spend 6,000 gold that you grind for a few hours just to buy a amulet that you're not even going to use could definitely discourage a new player like myself. Now, you're supposed to grind in these games. It's supposed to be very long of a grind, but I feel like they could up the gold rate just a little bit for beginning game because we'll probably get spoiled later on. Let's talk about when you finally make it to the trial and you're going to unlock your ascendancy. There is a system called the honor system that you're seeing in the background footage, and pretty much you have to do the whole trial without this bar hitting 0. This was very intimidating for me. I mean, when I first did it, I was like, dude, there's no way I can do this. I literally got skill checked. I'm like, dude, you gotta be so careful. But again, switch some things around. Chat pretty much talked me through it and was like, hey, you got this, you know, to make some changes. And pretty much when I ran that first trial, I ended up getting those unique boots to drop. So the second trial I ran was pretty simple because I was just quicker than most enemies and I just ran around and only did the objective. But man, oh man, I mean, this felt, I hate to compare it, but it felt like almost like the intensity of a day 1 Destiny raid. My heart was racing. I was trying my hardest. I had to lock it in, and I just felt like that excitement was there for me to enjoy, and I'm sure others will too. Scaling. So when you're playing by yourself, you might see videos of players playing by themselves and just melting bosses, and you're like, hey, that's cool because they're experienced with the game. But when you play with friends, I've been playing with my clanmate VC, and dude, we've been getting tore up. And I get it, it's supposed to scale, but ad density and sometimes even monsters taking so much more damage can be discouraging. And pretty much I recommend playing with more than one player because in most boss fights, if your teammate died, it was over. Like, it was almost impossible to get a res unless you stunned the boss. So I feel like playing with 2 people in your team, if someone dies, either of you could go for the res and you can have a chance. You know, I feel like games like this are supposed to mainly be towards solo play, but it's also fun to be grinding with your friends and being like, hey, I got this, you need this, let's drop it, you know, and just kind of have that excitement together and talk about your builds. But again, scaling could scare some people away because it's way more difficult, but as it should. But I just wanted to give a comment on it. Melee classes, I feel like playing on a warrior, I do get penalized a little bit because some bosses you fight are just anti-melee. You're better off just sitting in the back, Harry Potter, you know, using your wand, using your ranged attacks with your crossbow, and just sitting in the back and killing the boss and just dodging their attacks. And that's okay, I get it, but I stuck with the melee class, so I'm gonna make a broken build and just melt bosses and suck it up. But I do feel like I'm warning you that if you do play a melee class like warrior or monk, that you're going to run into some issues. Resist system. So when you're playing on the resist and you go into your character screen and you look at your resist, in the first couple areas of the game, you don't really have any gear that's going to save you from that. So you're kind of just at a disadvantage the whole game. And I get that it's supposed to be hard, but through the campaign, I feel like there should be a little bit of leniency, but hey, that's why it's supposed to be a grindable game and supposed to be hard. So please pay attention to your resists, your armor. You know, when you get into Act 3, you're negative 20%. And then when you start playing in cruel mode and you go into the maps for the end game trials, you're going to pretty much be at a disadvantage the whole time. So make sure you're grinding those resist percentages and paying attention because 1% could change you in this game. Like if you're 70% resist against lightning, but you're in end game and you're supposed to be at 75%, that 5% will literally one-shot you. So make sure you're paying attention to that. But again, I feel like there's nothing wrong with this as a bad thing to talk about the game, but it's just the game doesn't really give you a chance to set up for that unless you're really grinding for gear or get lucky at vendors. But again, you're probably not going to have currency. Another thing I realized when I was playing with VC, body blocking, we would go in tight spaces and just run into each other and end up getting killed. That happens, but I feel like hit markers should be opened up a little bit, but overall, not a bad thing to talk about. Again, all these things that I mentioned are nothing to badmouth the game. It's just stuff that I realized and I wanted to give my honest opinion. But overall, I think this game is a masterpiece. I'm going to keep grinding it, mixing it in with my other content. I hope some of you that have been watching me play it have been enjoying it. I cannot wait to work on my build and start finishing the end game and get that hammer of the gods unlocked for my Titan and start calling down hammers and crushing enemies. Great job to the devs creating this game. They're going to probably be doing a lot of updates to keep the game balanced. Hopefully my review is giving you some encouragement to grind the game more and avoid some things that I pointed out. But like I said, not just because I said they're bad things doesn't make the game bad. It's just stuff I enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.